Welcome to Fresh One, the BD Outdoors podcast brought to you by the Coronado Brewing Company. Stay coastal. All right, we're here today with Tim Huckaby, the president of the San Diego Fly Fishers Club. Happy to have you here.
Good to be here, Ricky.
Man. Also have Nate Winicki alongside me.
Yo, glad to be here as well.
Yeah.
Excited to get into this one. This should be a really interesting episode, something that we don't typically talk about.
100%.
Exactly, and I'm very familiar with the podcast, the site, have been for years, right? So I'm stoked to get you guys excited about, fly fishing in the saltwater because it's super fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Totally different.
It's just something that personally I've never even fly fished once, fresh or salt, and seeing the vast range that fly fishing has across the world, and then kind of translating that into the salt, specifically our fishery. I know you fished all around the world. We'll get into that for sure, but why don't you go ahead and kind of give a little bit of your background, I guess, and the club and what you guys do and what you guys specialize in.
Well, background, I'm a lowly software guy from Los Angeles, California, but I've been out here 45 years. Yeah, I'm the president of the San Diego Fly Fishers Club. You would think, oh, that's maybe 10 old white guys, but no, it's a pretty huge club, like 350 strong, 250 who are active. We do 200 events a year. Like I was just down the street over the weekend at a fly tying event.
You said 200 events a year?
200 events a year. And that's beginning fly fishing classes every Sunday at Lake Murray.
Yeah.
Every Sunday. So there's, 52 of them, or maybe 50. Right, but we do Baja trips, which I know you guys want to talk about. Oh yeah, because that's kind of the San Diego fly fishing thing is freaking Baja. But we go to Montana, Rockies. We go to a lot of places. Fly tying classes, fly rod building classes. It adds up. I was kind of surprised this year when I heard we did over 200.
Yeah,
events.
It's incredible.
And then all the conservation stuff we do and outreach, teach kids how to fish. We're eDNA tracking the Southern California steelhead. If you've ever heard of that fish, that's a magical fish.
Oh, I have.
Thought to be extinct.
Yeah, I thought it was a myth at this point.
Right.
I didn't even know they were still around.
Cool story.
Did you see the salmon pulled out of the San Diego River a couple months ago?
Isn't that freaking great?
Oh, it was a disgusting looking fish, but I guess it was real.
He'd been through the wars. That.
Oh yeah.
Fish.
Oh yeah.
God only knows how. Confused maybe, but he came way south.
I mean, or there was just a historical spawning ground down here,
Well, historically, definitely.
Yeah.
And like the river we're testing most is called the Santa Margarita, and it's on Camp Pendleton.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so it takes an act of God just to get in there.
Yeah.
And it has a resident population of steelhead trout that go out to the ocean. Adragimus. There's a scientific word for that, right? They go out.
We'll get the scientist on in the next
episode. They do their love, and then they come back in, right, to spawn, and then they go back out and they eat, and and because the climate is different than it was 100 years ago, they only come in and out every 5 years or when the rains are big.
Interesting.
Like now. Yeah, it's super interesting.
It kind of makes sense that it's on Camp Pendleton too, because if you look at our whole coastline, we are so heavily urbanized and developed on our SoCal kind of scene here, and Camp Pendleton is just this blank spot on the map. It's nothing. It's exactly how it was 100 years ago. And I think that's really the only reason those steelhead can still go up that river. There's no dams or anything.
Them out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you make a great point too, because Pendleton is its own wildlife type thing. You know that there is a population of wild buffalo on Camp Pendleton?
I had no idea.
Oh, they're crazy.
Really?
I
ran
named
into
everything. Yeah, no, it's nuts. You'll be at at a parking lot, out, on the innards of the base, and there'll just be a buffalo on the side eating grass. It tripped me out the first time I saw it. But there's almost 100 of them. There's a whole head of buffalo that are on there.
They're thriving because there's
absolutely.
no humans where they live.
Mm-hmm.
There is some fishing up there, and if you know someone
and some military training going on.
Yeah.
Some military training.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
Ricky,
no,
you got to dodge
it.
the guys that are shooting at each other to get to the fishing on Pendleton, and in the process, you run by these buffalo, and you're like, what the?
Right? That's incredible.
It's cool.
So I know a lot of, I think, the Southern California view of fly fishing, at least from people who strictly fish saltwater, it's like, oh, these guys are out in the mountains, hiking up at 6,000 feet, right?
6,000.
And 10, whatever it is.
12,000.
And you spend fly fishing gear is really expensive if you get really into the nitty gritty.
Just like you guys.
Yeah, just like us. But I think a lot of people's views like, oh, you guys are going and catching these, 6-inch fish and you're releasing them, which is great. But the allure of fly fishing, I think so many people think is like, oh, you guys go target these small fish on these $2,000 setups. But I really want to dive into like the saltwater aspect of fly fishing, because I know your club does, obviously a couple of your events are saltwater, and people just kind of think we can't target these bigger pelagics on the fly rod maybe. But talking to more and more people, we had Ryan Griffin in here the other day, and he's talking about fishing in the bays, just switching it up a little bit and making it maybe a little bit more of a challenge on yourself, because it's more technical. You have vastly different baits than what we're fishing on conventional gear. So maybe we start in the bays and then head offshore. Well,
let's
and hear a little bit about.
Let's get over the elephant in the room first. You packed a lot into that.
Yeah.
So, old white guy hiking at 12,000 feet, targeting a fish that's 6 inches is long, that he puts back in the water once he catches it. It's true. There is some allure to it. You're in nature and things like that. But I always joke that, if I was fly fishing for a steak, I would keep it. We're fly fishing for trout. Trout eat bugs, so they taste terrible, right? We're not fly fishing for bluefins.
That might be a controversial
the Sierras. All right, so let's get over that first. That's totally different type of fly fishing. I love it. That a fly rod, you can be very accurate, like cast to a 2-inch window accurate. So
if you're good,
like anything, it takes practice.
Yeah.
You guys have all your techniques, and you work hard. And
you should see how much we backlash.
Right? Yeah. So what else was in there? The saltwater thing.
Yeah.
Totally different fly rods. Obviously, a trout rod. We have these crazy weighting systems. Like a trout rod is a 5-weight typically fly rod. It weighs 3 ounces. Get your arms around that.
Wow.
The whole rod, 9 feet long, is 3 ounces. Sometimes 2.5 ounces.
Jeez.
Like a nice Orvis rod is like 2.5 ounces. But you get into saltwater, obviously you're gonna fail if you do. Even a spotty will break that, right? So the rods are a lot bigger, and we're not fishing bugs, tiny little bugs on top of the water, right? We're fishing bait patterns. Some of them are crab patterns. Similar to what you guys do. Like a tuna feather is very similar to a fly that we would throw, right? We use feathers, right? Very, very similar. The weird thing, or that, I have a guiding license in California, so when I'm teaching someone how to cast a fly rod, and I'll do it with you guys in a heartbeat, you got to think, if you get a conventional fisherman, and if it's okay, that's what we call you guys. Okay, so a conventional fisherman.
It's not the worst thing we've been called.
You've got all that weight, whether it's what do you call those? Iron? You cast iron?
Yeah, service
irons. Yeah. Even bait has weight to it. So your physics when you're casting that conventional rod is the weight from the bait itself carries it out there, right? Well, in trout fishing, you have to have tiny things that don't weigh anything. If you tied one of those onto one of your rods, it'd go nowhere, right? So we cast the line, not the end of the line, not the hook, right? Not the fly. The good news is you can be wildly accurate. It's super fun. You've seen it on TV. The bad news is you can't put like 20 fly fishers on one of your boats. Right? Because the line's going behind you and it's loading. It's doing that curve thing, right? So when I go out, like with my buddy Hugh down the street, on his big ass Grady White, all conventional fish until if he can get them up in the water column. And then you can throw something like a tuna feather on a fly rod and get out of his way. Like maybe I'll run up to the bow. And that is super fun fishing. Not as productive, let's just face it. There are very few scenarios in saltwater where a fly rod is going to be more productive than you guys. It's not about catching. There's a couple, right, in the mangroves.
Sure.
If you want to go there, if you want to switch over to the mangroves of Abre Ojos, we can get tremendous accuracy and fire that little fly, in between the roots.
Yeah.
And if those broomtails come up and yank them out quickly, you probably do a little bit better with the fly rod.
Have you caught a tuna on the fly?
Yeah.
What's the biggest tuna you've been able to land on
Not
the fly rod?
as big as you think.
Like 30 pounds?
Oh yeah. I've caught a 8-foot tarpon on a fly rod.
Okay.
Nice.
That almost killed me, by the way. I'll never do that again. That was a 2-hour battle. Like, you guys
Jeez.
go out there and you battle fish for like 4 hours.
Sometimes.
What are you, freaking nuts? Hand the
Ideally,
rod off.
ideally not.
Ideally, no, it doesn't take that long. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The yellowtail, if you can get them on a fly rod, they're super fun.
Oh, yeah, I
A
bet.
mackerel is so fun on a fly rod because they fight like hell. Dorado, first time I caught a Dorado, I thought I was going to faint. I've never seen a fish swim that fast in my life. And I've been fishing
You
for
caught
a
a wahoo yet?
long time. A wahoo on a fly rod is...
Near impossible?
I don't think... I've never heard of anybody doing it.
I bet someone done it, but it sounds
I bet
hard.
someone
It
has.
sounds
You
difficult.
could troll them, but that's not the same thing.
You steal
Yeah,
lead
if
or
you caught
something.
a wahoo on a fly rod, you'd be in for a challenge because they just run.
I just thought of it because you were talking about the speed of the fish.
Well, it's funny, we think these trout swim so fast because they're predators and they're mean and they eat each other. The first time I saw a Dorado, come and take my fly, it happened so quickly. I just, what just happened? They swim like 50 miles an hour,
That's wild.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
So
they
cool.
do, and they'll just hit that fly, and it's funny because, like, with conventional gear, our reels are, 6-to-1 or 7-to-1 or whatever.
See, I don't even know what that means.
The gear
6-to-1,
ratio or whatever.
7-to-1.
You have a reel where you turn that handle, it's a 1-to-1 ratio.
Oh, got
so
it.
every
Okay.
turn of that handle, you get one rotation of your reel. So everything is slowed down in terms of line capture.
Okay, we must be like 1-to-20 then, because you're not typically fighting a fish
That's
on
right.
the reel.
That's right. So
you're fighting the
so,
fish by
yeah.
holding the line.
That's right, because that's
The reel is just a place to hold the line until you catch a Dorado and it freaking takes off 200 yards and right, just like you
Jeez.
guys.
So, I mean, the videos I've seen of people, like, kind of going back to Ricky, like trout fishing with flies, they never use their reel.
Never.
They pull that fish all the way in just using their hands.
And it's about being dainty and playing the fish because a
Got it.
trout fights like nothing else. If trout were 8 feet long, they'd be very difficult to catch.
I'm sure.
They go ballistic.
Yeah,
they,
yeah.
They never give up. A wild trout. We
Mm-hmm.
have a problem in the world of hybridization, and we've stocked them and put them in hatcheries and kind of screwed it up. But a wild native trout, like they have in the Upper Kern River, they have a special rainbow trout up there. It'll fight to your feet and then still keep fighting as you're trying to let it go.
And I think that's the allure of bringing the fly technique over to the salt, right? Like, you can take a spotted bay bass or anything that lives in the bays, whether it's a croaker, halibut, whatever, and that fish, if you want to get technical and if you want to challenge yourself, that fish is going to put up a proper fight on that light gear. And I think as more people get into it, I think that's one of the main reasons why, right? Like, you can go out and target spotties, catch 20 on a good day, catch like couple 20, 30 fish, and it's challenging, right? Instead of just cranking those things to the boat on a 300 size bait casting reel.
Yeah.
And it's in a sense like maybe it's more fun, right? So I know you fish
Different
a lot in
type
the
of
bays.
fun.
Yeah.
Ricky. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it's more fun.
Okay.
Because fun is so relative.
If we're catching fish,
My whole
we're
life
happy.
is fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think I was telling you about the electric reel thing.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, "Are you one of those fly fishing snobs?" Absolutely not. I love conventional fishing. I just don't know a lot about it. I have an expertise in trout. That's kind of why I like the saltwater fishing. I've learned so much in the last decade with a fly rod in saltwater. But I mentioned my buddy Hugh, big BDOutdoors guy, has the subscription to the Fishing Report, your sponsor.
Fish Dope. Yeah.
Right? He takes me out on his gazillion-dollar boat. And at
Good friend.
he's a great guy. And at certain times of year, you go out there in like 300 feet of water, and you fish those red things. What are they called?
Rockfish? Yeah, rock
right?
cotting, baby.
So
Those red things.
He takes me out there. He's drinking
we
beer.
call it.
He's drinking beer the whole time, and he has this electric reel for his wife. And he's like, dude, try the electric reel because you've done this, right?
Yep.
300 feet.
Oh, especially
that's
when
a freaking workout.
Yeah, we once they switched up the regulations and we could fish like 700 feet of water. I'll do that like once, and I don't want to reel up from 700 feet 100 times.
No, it would kill you.
No, the electric reels are
so
badass.
the electric reel, you press the button, it goes down. You wait, the fish catches itself, and you press the button, it reels it up, and they're delicious. They're fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd like to do that too.
I just thought of a funny story. We were codding when cod was open. I think we were down south, and we were fishing like 700 feet of water.
Jeez.
And Nate was dropping his rig down. He's like, "Oh, I'm snagged," and it had only been falling for like 10 seconds. We were in 700 feet of water. We go, "No, you're not snagged." And he goes, "No, like it's stuck on something."
Like it's not
It's
going
moving.
down,
The rock
and I
is
can't
moving.
bring it up either.
We were fishing like a 3-pound weight, so that thing was absolutely flying through the water column.
Holy
And
cow.
he hooked a mako, ate one of the rockfish, like a curly tail.
On the way down, it ate
With
my
the
gulp
3-weight weight.
with the 3-pound weight, rocketing that thing to the bottom. So the
Holy
electric reel, when it can't wind up anymore, just starts stalling.
Yeah.
So I put it into gear to
Can't
bring it up,
compute, can't
and
compute.
it's going like not gaining anything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, what the hell just happened? And we looked down, and this thing was like at deep color, circling around.
We saw it
was a
tangled.
trip.
It tangled all our other lines, and we lost it. But that was an interesting. Like, oh, I'm snagged, and it was a shark.
Did the mako come up?
No, we saw it, but then it chewed us off.
Because we fly fish makos here in San Diego.
I was gonna ask about that.
Yeah,
I think
everybody needs to do it once.
the most,
because it's kind of like cheating. Because a fly fisherman's definition of cheating is you chum the shit out of the water, right?
Yeah.
And you get the sharks just all worked up. And you literally are casting a fly rod like
Sight fishing them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like 20 feet, like and then the captain has a teaser. Is that a familiar term with you guys?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a bait fish without a hook, like one of your fancy lures, but doesn't have a hook on, and he's getting them all excited, right? It's the easiest thing in the world to do on a fly rod until you hook one.
Oh, it looks
and then
exhilarating.
They go ballistic.
They're acrobatic,
Yes.
aren't they? They jump and everything.
Fantastic, like a trout. They jump up.
It's an ocean
they're
trout.
shaking their heads. Yeah, like Corvina is
Yep.
like a trout with a V. Corvina, very similar. You guys have fished those.
Oh,
right?
one of our
yeah.
favorites to target. Yeah,
You,
because
you only pull a fly out of a Corvina's face once, right? Those two
Yep.
the fangs.
The fangs, baby.
Man.
I know.
great fish.
They're fun
Yeah.
fish. They fight
That's
incredible.
the Abre Ojos thing.
Yeah.
There's a gazillion of them.
Yeah.
And it's just great fun fishing. And they
That's
taste
so
pretty
cool.
good too. We harvest a few.
Yeah,
Make fish
absolutely.
tacos, yeah.
Yeah, there's this viral clip of this fly fishing guide, and they have probably like an 800 or 1,000 pound Miko right on the stern of their boat. And it's the most exhilarating thing because, just like you're saying, they're teasing it and they're getting the fly in front of its face again, like the 4th time this thing comes up and just goes slurp, eats the fly. The guy sets the hook, and the crazy thing, this fish is so fast. The line is going that way. The fish is jumping over here.
Right.
And there's so much
There's a
drag.
bow in the fly
yes.
line,
And
yeah.
this shark was doing backflips, like literally 10 feet of air going up, and like it probably did 20 jumps.
Wow.
And it's one of the craziest clips I think I've ever seen.
I believe you're talking about Captain Conway Bowman, who's
I
a
think
member
so.
of the club.
He should be.
San
He better
Diego
be.
native.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have some famous people in the club in fly fishing, in that world.
in the fly fishing world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys you wouldn't recognize the names, but are pretty well known. Yeah. One that comes to mind if you wanted some name dropping, he's on the board of the club with me. His name is Captain Joel Stewart. He's an active Navy guy. He travels the world with the Navy and fly fishes, and he wrote a famous book in our circles called Fly Rod in My Sea Bag. And it's about him spinning up a fly fishing school in Baghdad during the Iraq War at the palace of the bad guy, of Hussein. After the Americans took his palace, he had all these ponds with all these crazy freshwater fish in there.
No way.
Yeah,
And
and
he
he's
fished
teaching
for
all
'em
these
all?
Navy guys how to cast a fly rod and catch fish. He's a great guy. It's a great book.
Wow.
Fly Rod in My Sea Bag. If you're into
I
reading.
mean, that's a
books
good
like
way
that.
to travel the world and experience a bunch of different.
If you got to be in the
fisheries.
Navy, that's a
Yeah.
good way to mix it up, right? Yeah.
Huh.
Good guy. Good guy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm gonna transition us into. We talk about Baja a lot on the show, but it's.
How could you not?
Yeah, I mean
We
it's
all love
such
it.
an incredible fishery, and the opportunities are really endless down there. Without getting too specific into like certain locations, I don't want to blow anyone's spot. But
I'm not weird about that.
I am.
You guys are. You guys are, like when you take a picture, you don't want to have anything in the background so that somebody can ID it.
Luckily, most of the time we're 80 miles offshore, so the background is nothing.
Well, but on the forums, like the BD forums,
oh yeah,
like if you give away your location, it's like these guys want to
warfare.
Castrate you, right?
Yeah.
It's getting to that point. People will zoom in on your sunglasses to see the reflection and try to figure out where you are.
Well, as more and
There's
more
all
people
this
get
crazy stuff.
into fishing, like all these spots are more crowded, and there's a time and a place for everything to show off your catch and whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm like twice your guys' age, so at this stage in my fishing career, I'd rather have a youngster just take my spot.
Yeah.
I have more fun with other people catching.
That's a great
get there.
place to be.
You'll get
One
there,
day, one
Ricky.
day.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, just hearing about some of the the events that you guys do down there, and more so talking about like location, just talking about the fishery and how it compares. I know you mentioned you guys also do conventional fish when you're down there. Obviously, like some of these species we catch in Baja are so powerful. I couldn't even imagine that you'd be able to land it on a fly rod.
In Mag Bay, you can't fish
a
fly rod the
whole
time.
The film
you
that
you need conventional gear.
Costa just put out a film that they're fishing stripers on fly rods, exclusively, and it looks so badass.
Stripers are fun.
And it's a very visual fishery, which is cool.
Fight.
But
yeah.
then you get into the shallows and the mangroves, up and down all of Baja, and you have opportunities to catch grouper, snapper, and all these things pull harder than hell.
Well, my story, I know my way around a trout stream. I've been doing it a long time, right? But the San Diego Club, I want to say at least half of them grew up saltwater fishing. So conventional fishing. Half the people we have in the club are saltwater fly fishermen. In fact, we have some people in the club who have never fished for trout, but they exclusively fly fish. Or if they've only done saltwater fly fishing. And this group of guys,
I don't believe it.
No, I swear to God,
Yeah.
Kai Schumann, just native San Diegan, professional level fly fisherman, fishes both, but he's never fished for trout ever, right? And him and this other guy, John Ashley, both big Baja guys, because they grew up here in San Diego and fish with their dads in Baja. Well, they're like, Huck, you've got to go down there to Baja. I'm like, yeah, drug cartels, all that. Is it unsafe? Are we gonna, is it gonna ruin my truck? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, trust me. So if you have someone like that to take you under your wing, which they did, they totally took me under the wing, and then you experience. I love the forest, obviously, because I'm a fly fisherman. But the nature in Baja is equally as good.
Oh, it's incredible.
Right? It's so unspoiled. And there's so much of it. And there's so few people where we fish. Mm-hmm. And the people you run into are just great people. Like we do now that we go down to Abre Ojos, we do a ton of charity down there. We bring... money, of course, and books for the school, but we also bring food that they can't get. Mm-hmm. Like you go to Trader Joe's and you just load up on all this crap, chocolate stuff. They can't get that stuff, so we bring that down there. So now we're friends with the co-op. You know what the co-op is? Mm-hmm. In Baja, they have a lot of the tiny fishing towns are cooperatives where they all have one common goal of feeding each other through the ocean, and they're great in conservation, right? It's healthy. They understand the science, and Abre Ojos is one of those places. It's a co-op. So now we're friends with the co-op fishermen who, if you could speak a little Spanish, and I can, it can be very informative, because these fishermen know how to fish, they'll tell you what to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But you get down there, it's camping. I love camping, right? You're camping on the beach. If you want, we we're all old and such, so we, bring a ton of booze and beer and steaks, and, we have a Traeger down there and all this stuff. So it's not like we're really sacrificing. But that week down there every June, God, I dream about it all year long. And you guys know, because Baja is so freaking great. But Baja on a fly rod?
Do you fish with guides?
Well, in Mexico.
Yeah.
You know the typical Montana guide that costs $600
No,
a day,
like a local guy.
right?
Yeah.
So we joke about it. The guides on the Ponga are really just boat drivers. So yeah, they up farther south, like in the La Paz area, Ventana, we have Ponga drivers, and they don't really know a lot about fly fishing, but through the years
They can get you the right spots.
exactly, and they know how to make bait. That's
Yeah.
we would just get skunked if they weren't throwing bait in the water and getting those Dorado crazy. We'd get skunked. We absolutely would. We can't retrieve the fly as quickly as you guys can. We can articulate a little bit better, meaning make it jiggity like a struggling bait fish, right?
But you can't have it just
because we have the line in our
hand.
water. We could do that. Well, we can't get it back, and we don't troll. That's silly. You might as well go to conventional gear if you're going to troll, which is wildly effective, right? But the interesting thing I think is through the years, these boat drivers, these captains of the Pongas, have gotten into the conservation thing down there. So at first, if you put a Dorado back in the water, they're like, "Are we allowed? Are you going to beep out the F words?" They basically in Spanish are like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's food. What are you putting food back in? Returno? That's the word in Spanish. Returno, right?" But nowadays they totally get it because, with the gear being so good, both on your side of the wall and mine, getting better and better and better. We're just more effective fishermen than we were 50 years ago.
That's one of the huge things that I've been really stoked to see throughout Baja recently over the past, decade or what have you, seeing their conservation efforts on their own end. Like, of course,
Totally.
the ocean is one of the main sources of food for a lot of people in Baja. So I understand absolutely keeping a portion of fish that you catch, but more and more the captains down there and the guides who are awesome understand, like, hey, we'll keep a couple, and if you want to release fish, like, absolutely do it, because they understand that they got to keep their fishery healthy, not only for them and their commercial fishing efforts and their efforts with the co-ops, I guess, to make sure everyone has food on the table, and also have tourism and people coming down to come fish, and obviously the fishery has to stay healthy for that.
Right.
So
throughout the years they put two and two together, right?
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
tourists, more fishermen, better we do. And down there in by La Paz, you guys probably do the same thing. You always catch a fish for the captain, right? Because that's what they go home with the fish at night.
Yeah.
We go back to a restaurant, There's no reason really for us to harvest it if we're on vacation down there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, some guys fill up the freezer and do that stuff, and I get that, especially if it's a really nice fish like the fast one we mentioned earlier. Wahoos. Yeah,
that's coming home in the cooler for sure.
Yeah,
I've ever had. Absolutely.
I'll make room in the cooler
in
for that one
too.
Really?
Hawaii wahoos, yeah, it's super fun.
So I was going to ask, with these Baja trips, do you go down there with certain goals in mind? Do you want to catch a certain thing or a certain size of a fish, or is it all just about having a good time?
What a great question. I got to think about that one. I think everyone's different. I really love the camping experience, and I love catching 30 different species.
Totally.
And by the way, Corbino with a B.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not rare down there. They're so rare pulling them out of our surf.
Yeah.
I mean, you're stoked when you pull one out of the surf.
until you talk to a guy who knows what he's doing, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I got like 20 today."
Yeah, bullshit. Yeah.
I seen it.
No, it's probably true when they have
I'm
live bait.
sure in
nothing's
Mexico,
better than
no,
live bait.
No, dude, the fly is a great way to target. I haven't done it, but I've seen guys when I'm down and fishing the surf, like these guys on the fly are roping them, and they're just fishing
up where we live.
Here,
up in Carlsbad,
actually,
where we live,
yes.
If you're good, you can spot fish them.
Oh yeah,
some of the really good Corbina guys actually see what they're casting,
and that's like it's kind of like it mimics in my mind the fishery on the East Coast where you're fishing bonefish in the flats, right? Because you can see them tailing, and the Corbina will come up.
I'm so impressed you know what a tailing bonefish is. There you go. By the way, they're in Abre Ojos. bonefish.
Yeah.
They're in San Diego Bay,
San
too.
Diego.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't
They're in
spot
Mission
fish them like
Bay
in the
yeah.
Bahamas like we do. But
Yeah.
yeah. But back to Nate's question, what's the most special
Yeah.
part about that? For me, it's the camaraderie and the camping. Oh, by the way, females go on this trip. We have professional level females, a lot of them, fly fishing females in the club. And it's just not weird. You know, I like for largemouth fishing, I lean on these ladies. Like there's this gal, Kim Jones, like the greatest grandmother ever, knows more about fly fishing for largemouth bass than any human in the world. And she's such a great lady.
Maybe she can teach Ira something.
You guys need to come down on this trip. It is so fun. What's also fun is, you know, if you think it through, if you're in the mountains and you're trout fishing, you're targeting one species of fish. Mm-hmm. In that part of the world, you could catch one of 30 different species. Mm-hmm. I kidded earlier about, what the hell is this thing? I've done that so many times. Like, hey, John, what is this? Oh, that's a pargo. I'm like, wow, it's kind of cool. He said, you should consider eating that. And I'm like, nah.
I mean, that's just the saltwater in general, right? If you're fishing a stream, you know you're going to catch one of 3 types of trout. And you're fishing the saltwater, even in the bay, like, you could catch up to like 10 different species.
Isn't that cool?
It's
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot, especially in San Diego Bay. Yeah, there's so many odd fish in there that through the years have come down from the hurricanes, and they get the green sea turtles. Have you ever run into them?
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
Nate's a bay,
how did they get in there?
Nate's a bay specialist. This guy knows San Diego Bay inside and out.
I love my sea turtles in there.
Yeah,
but
we do. There's a crazy Wednesday group in the club that fishes San Diego Bay.
Yeah.
And they literally do 52 days a week. They fished on Super Bowl Sunday, for God's sakes.
Yeah, so did I. It was good.
Of course you did.
It was pretty good. Yeah, that's funny.
Well,
I gotta
there's
connect with
no
that
one else.
group.
These
Then
guys know
that sounds
so
like
much.
my kind of people. They fish the
yeah.
bay every single week
In a float tube.
Dang.
It could be raining sideways. It could be 35 degrees at Liberty Station or
they're,
Coronado.
They're that committed.
They're in the water. You know, they're wearing waders.
Wow.
But
Good
they're
for
in a
them.
float tube in the water every freaking Wednesday.
Good for them.
Yeah. Right? So you ask, how do you guys get to 200 events a year? Well, there's another 50 right there.
Yeah. That's super cool. And we were talking right before we got on how, especially not only in the bay, but all over, you can use a really simple pattern, like a clouser or like a little, I'm blanking. What are they called? They're little black.
I'm impressed you know what a clouser is. You
I don't
going there.
I don't understand what's going on.
I was about to impress
Famous
you
guy,
so
Bob
much.
Clouser, tied the bead eyes on the wrong side of the hook so it rides hook up, and it looks like a bait fish. That's a clouser.
So basically, you can fish that for everything. Really? Okay.
Most of the patterns we use in Baja are not weighted, so they stay in the top of the water column. That's kind of the fun thing too. Like if you get a visual fish to come up, in the open ocean, right? Popper fishing. Oh my God, is that the most fun thing in the world?
Oh yeah.
A popper fly, so freaking fun. So fun.
Yeah, the visual bite is, you can't beat it.
Oh, it's nuts. It's kind of like trout fishing though. You know, the trout come up and yeah.
So what about the different types of line? Because I know that there's floating line and there's sinking lines, and then there's
You're just
like
dying to make this
sinking
complex,
tip.
aren't you?
Well, I want to learn. I'm trying to get into this.
And it goes without saying, if we're bay fishing, whether it be in a kayak or a float tube or a boat, for spotties don't come up, right?
Yeah.
So we're fishing sinking.
Not often.
No, not unless they're crazy. We're fishing sinking lines. A fly line is 100 feet long, of which 30 is fishable. Right, so you're basically the bay fisherman's got about 30 feet to play with. Adionda has that deep channel that goes like 45, 50 feet. So it's you just can't get it down to where the fish are. Okay, so in trout fishing, typically, if you're throwing a dry fly, that's a floating line. The floating lines we use, like in Abreojos and Ventana and La Paz, places like that, aren't really floating. They sit in about 2 inches of water, because for some reason a saltwater fish likes the agitation, the popper thing, the agitation of the water on top.
So it's just like a suspending bait.
Is that what you call it?
Like just under the
it's
surface.
just under the water, but when
like
you pull it comes up and pushes water like a popper, right? So Then you have the weight of the line, which matches the weight of the rod. Because, to my physics example earlier, if you have a line that isn't heavy enough on a heavy like tuna fly rod, it's gonna go nowhere. So the lines have to get heavier, because that's how you load them behind you, right? So, you know, in the Abriojos area of Baja, we typically fish in a 7 or an 8 weight rod and match it with a 7 or 8 weight line, which is either sinking or floating. That's typically what we do. You go to La Paz and you catch it, you know, targeting roosters and Dorado, then those are 10s and 12s, which means just bigger rods, heavier line, right? Also in sinking and floating, but mostly floating in that part of the world because, you know, there's lots of species, but the freaking Dorado and the roosters are what you're targeting. You know, you can catch jacks like crazy and they're totally fun, and ladyfish and some other stuff like that. But, a rooster fish, a big rooster fish. And I know your story about catching a big rooster. I saw that on the podcast. I was just getting tingles just listening to you talk about it because it was special. Fun. Yeah, you got a big one. They're hard to fool.
Yeah, that was fun. I've caught one ever in my life, and it was like 35-pounder. And
fought like hell, I bet.
Oh my God!
Right.
But it was interesting. When we think of, because we were catching yellowtail kind of in the same zone, and like a yellowtail is going to take you to the bottom, try and break you off in some structure, and the roosterfish fought like hell, but it didn't seem like that fish was trying to break me off. It was just going on run after run. Like those things are strong.
Like a bonefish. Out and you get them close, and then they go out forever.
Exactly, and they're so bitchin' looking.
Yeah.
We released both those fish. We doubled up. It was crazy because I'd never seen roosterfish in my life, and we rode up on a spot and they were actually like foaming like the bluefin do on bait. And we're like, I think
that's right. You guys call it foaming when the fish are feeding. They push bait to the top.
Yeah, like whitewater.
Yeah,
and
even just watching a rooster do that is almost as fun as fishing.
Almost as fun.
Because they're so
almost as fun.
Vicious.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was a special fish, and yeah, they pull hard. That was a good
special
fight. And I can't imagine like the visual eat from a topwater fly from one of those things. You see the dorsal just tracking your bait. It's got to be.
And they
all
swim
time.
so quickly. Another big difference in the saltwater fish. They're just so much faster.
More powerful.
And it catches you by surprise. And you know, you guys set the hook like freaking monsters. Like, well, we don't have the backbone in the rod to do that. In fact, you'll lose a fish on a fly rod if they call it trout setting.
Yeah.
In a trout, you just kind of raise the rod to get tight, right? So we strip set. And you strip set on a rooster, and you could tear your bicep right there. So get me all fired up. See, it's wintertime when we're recording this,
right.
so I'm just jonesing to get back into the season again, right?
I think there was another super cool clip I saw where there was a fly fisherman. I think they were fishing for either marlin or big tuna, and they had him up on the top going crazy. And like you're saying, he takes his line and he pulls it, and then I think he does like a double-handed he goes whack, 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 and sets the hook so hard into this fish, and then it just starts screaming off.
That's the tarpon thing in Florida, you know, because it's all cartilage, so you really got to stick them in the face, and that's when they do that double, triple set thing.
So that tarpon took you, what, 3 hours?
It was awful.
You would never do it again.
I said right then, you know, every muscle I had, and this is like, I don't know, a decade ago, so it's a lot better shape and not so old. Every muscle I had, you can relate to this, right? It was cramping. Like, I had muscles in my back cramping that I didn't even know I had.
Jeez.
It was just such a battle.
Was that in Florida?
Yeah.
Were you there for tarpon specifically, or did it just?
Yeah,
was it just like
we're targeting tarpon. Well, that reminds me of a story. We're in Ventana, and me and my buddy Kai, who I mentioned earlier, we're doing pretty good. We're sticking them, and we pull up on this black marlin, and it's like 12 feet long, and it's just lying there.
Good luck.
Yep, good
and
luck.
the ponga driver guy, the captain, as you call him, says, he's like, why aren't you casting at it in Spanish? And Kai looks at him like, are you insane? And I'm just like, no, we're not doing that. We are not.
Oh, you gotta try.
No, you do not want to break a $1,200 fly rod on a black marlin that you just can't. You couldn't handle that type of fish. Yeah, but people.
I mean, that's a hard fish to handle on conventional gear.
Absolutely.
It was a
Yeah,
monster.
kidding?
It was a huge.
You didn't take
fish.
a cast at it?
No.
Oh man.
We looked at it. We took pictures and said, "Ooh, that's cool. We'll let you guys
Right.
catch him and battle him for 8 hours."
So, I'm trying to think, like, with big fish. See, the biggest fish I've ever caught on the fly was actually at Lake Hodges. I got like a 12-pound carp. I got a giant carp.
There are people who
And
target carp with a fly rod. And love it.
I've caught a bunch of carp. None of them have compared to that carp in particular.
It was a mean
because
carp.
I was using a little fly and I was stripping right on the bottom, and this thing tracks it like a yellowtail did. It's right behind my
That's
fly.
rare.
It comes up and goes zoom, and sucks it up, and then turns the other way. And
that's weird because carp don't typically eat like that, right?
Oh,
They're
man.
sniffing in the mud.
well, that's kind of, I guess maybe
That's
I
cool.
was
Good for
over
you.
romanticizing it.
No,
But the
no.
thing was,
Fish
it
are
like
fish.
nose down in the mud, and then all of a sudden it saw my fly, went over to it, and ate that thing.
That's cool.
But
They look like a piece of corn.
oh, something like that. I don't know. But
Did you have a worm on the end of that fly?
right. But what was crazy about it is that I was so freaking tired afterwards because
They
the
fight.
reel is below at the very, very bottom of your rod. And this was the first like big fish I had caught, so I'm trying to like
Get him
pull
on the reel?
this
Yeah.
thing, and it's first off, you have so much like the action of your rod is so slow. Like it bends all the way throughout the entire rod. It never really shuts off. So the
Right.
rod doesn't do much for you. And
Not
my
on a fish like
wrists were just dying on a freaking carp. So what's the battle technique when you're on a bigger fish?
What are you,
Yeah, hey.
clairvoyant? Another great question because
Yeah.
it occurs to me that a bigger saltwater fly rod has the meat towards the butt of the rod, just like your guys' rods do.
Well,
And you
yeah, sorta,
fight
yeah.
a fish at like a 45-degree angle.
Uh-huh.
Whereas all other fly fishing, you're fighting rod high.
Ah,
And you're
okay.
fighting with the top. You know, a trout
Yeah.
this big, it fights like crazy, but you fight him with the top of the rod. You do that with a big fish, and you know the rod breaks in half.
Yeah.
So there's the difference. So we fight them
okay.
differently in the saltwater.
We call that high sticking.
High sticking.
Yeah, you
that's
high stick, you're gonna break your stuff.
You also call. I learned. I love learning from reading in the forum and watching your guys' podcast. You call it cutting. You're out in the open ocean. Somebody cuts you off. Right.
Burns you off.
Yeah. No. You're trolling, and someone cuts you off. You use that term, cuts you off.
Yeah.
You guys we call that high holing. Like you're
I've
on
never
a
heard that
river. Like, you're shaking your head in agreement. On a river, you know, all the trout face upstream because the food is coming at them. So you want to sneak up from behind them. So typically, you know, a big portion of trout fishing with a fly rod is reading the water. There's a head, there's a tail, there might be a deep run in the middle, there might be pocket water. There's a number of type of water, right? Well, if you get to like 100-foot stretch, you know, we have these unwritten rules, just like you do, about, you know, that's your stretch, right? And you're going to fish it from bottom to top. And when someone hops in front of you, it's called high holing. I don't know why, but it's called high holing.
No, that makes sense. They're
Yeah.
getting up above and
And they don't know. I mean, you know, I think the
giving them
great
the benefit
story
of the doubt.
the great story on your podcast was, you know, this guy didn't know. He's a brand new boat. He's not a fisherman. He didn't realize he's running over our lines, you know, so I went and talked to him, and he's like, oh, thank you. You know, I like that. I like to think the fisherman is not that complete asshole, you know.
And I think most of them are not. You know, it's,
I totally agree.
yeah, and it's just educating people. Like, dude, we're all in that spot at one point or another where we're just learning. Like, especially if you're a new angler, like you're just learning the ins and outs and being courteous and all that.
Right.
And it's offshore. You know, it's different. Like when we fish down in Baja, the pongueros will fish 10 feet away from one another, and it's no big deal because that's what they do.
Yeah.
Here, if you get within like
It's
a quarter
culturally
mile of someone,
acceptable.
absolutely. Yeah. And it works for everyone because everyone's catching fish. And if you get cut off with the boat next to you, like, oh no, let's hook another one, you know. But here, you know, if you're within a quarter mile of someone, you might get yelled at. But it's learning, you know, how to be courteous and what's appropriate and what's not. And
The unwritten rules of fishing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so we all do our best.
Yeah.
But no, we get pissed off sometimes, but it's give him the benefit of the doubt. He didn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, true.
But yeah.
Well, so I mean, kind of getting back to what we started with, the lagoon fishing. I'm kind of interested how you target halibut, because that's one of my favorite fish to target inshore, and everything I'm doing is very bottom oriented. So when you're talking about how you cannot typically fish the bottom, are you just targeting those shallow fish?
No, we do fish the bottom. It's just our bottom is a lot more shallow than your guys' bottom.
So are you fishing a lot in you mentioned float tubes earlier. Are a lot of these guys and girls fishing mainly out of like kayaks and float tubes?
We should talk about the kayak thing because, you know, historically a trout fisherman fishes in a float tube, in a lake, you know, something like that. But these guys in the club, these saltwater guys, you know, you got to get a kayak. You got to get a kayak. In fact, that's what led me to you, Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
I bought my kayak from Morgan.
Small world.
Yeah. And he just lives up in Oceanside. He is such a great guy. And his Huckaby videos are the best. So good. Yeah, he's anyway, so these guys are like, well, you want to go on the Mexico trip, you got to have a kayak. You know, you can't, the lagoons, well, the open ocean, number one, but the lagoons drain and fill so quickly. The tidal swings are like Adionda. They're just nuts, right? And you get caught out there with a float tube and you're walking 2 miles back to camp, right?
Seriously.
Or the opposite. You're going out to the open ocean, right? So when I got my first kayak, my Hobie kayak, you know what the H in Hobie stands for, by the way? Expensive. So when I got my first, I love that joke. When I got my first kayak, it changed my world. You pedal, like I always thought, you know, you're on these oar things, how are you going to fish? No, you pedal, you could go in reverse, which for a fly fisherman is everything. It helps you set, right? And it gives you access to so much more water. So it's rare that I would go back to my float tube now, being so spoiled by a kayak. You're sitting above the water. We already talked about that.
Yeah.
You know, in Lake Crowley up in the Sierras where the water's barely over freezing, there's just no way to be warm. It's snowing sideways in your face and you're still catching fish. But yeah, I'm getting too old for that. So, the kayak thing, it's just like anything. When you guys first started fishing, you got cheap gear, right? Or your dad bought you cheap gear, or your mom. And then as you get older, you start buying more, better and better stuff. So now I have this Hobie Mirage Lynx. It's built like a stand-up paddleboard.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's lightning fast. I can stand up and cast. I don't do a lot, but I could. And it weighs 40 pounds.
It weighs 40
I'm
pounds?
a tiny little guy, so I have this big-ass Tundra.
Yeah.
I can literally load the damn thing on top of my Tundra by myself. Right? Or I could just stick the thing in the back of my truck and drive to Adionda. But for Mexico, you know, we have like Yakima racks and you strap it down and it's Mexico, right? So you really got to strap it down. Just say their roads aren't as good as ours here in San Diego. Well, arguably.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
After the flooding last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so convenient, this. But, you know, that there's not one arrow that fits all Indians. Like we mentioned pro anglers, you know, big heavy kayak, but you could take it on the open ocean. It would have to be really calm to take a lynx out on the open ocean.
Got it.
Because it's like a stand-up paddleboard. The water's just going to be coming over the bow, right? And then a lot of the Baja fishermen in the club, fly fishermen, have those I-11Ss, the inflatables, right? So they just throw them in the back of their car and blow them up, you know, waterside.
We're coming into a whole new age of this stuff.
It's so technical, right?
There's these foldable ones too. You just like pop it all together and then you're out on the water. It's
Hobie
it's crazy.
makes that 9-foot I-11 whatever it's called, 9S, that technically you can check his baggage.
Really?
Can you imagine?
That'd be insane.
I've been fishing in Hawaii for a long time. But if I had a kayak out there, oh my God, I'd kill. And you could get away from tourists. That's the other thing about fly fishing here on our coast. Because the line's going behind you.
Yeah.
You know, that a lot of people vacation here. And the first thing they say after they pull the hook out of their face is, I didn't know you could fly fish in the ocean. You're like, so, I'm a nice guy. I love to talk. So, yeah, it's really fun. But they come up behind you. You don't see them. We have a blind spot like a snowboarder. And you just got to avoid people. And fly fishing on the shore in Hawaii is hard to avoid people. Short of some certain islands and some certain places, right?
Yeah. What about bone fishing in
I was going to say, have you targeted the bonefish in Hawaii?
That is something.
It's a bucket list.
It's a bucket list fish of mine.
In Oahu, they have that bay right by Pearl Harbor, and it's very productive. But our condo or our timeshare is on Kauai with a K, which, by the way, has trout. If you could get your arms around that.
They do?
Yeah.
What kind of trout?
They're not native, obviously, but they're wild.
No kidding.
I caught peacock bass in Hawaii.
Yes. So the Waiita is very close to where we go every year. It's a reservoir, and it's illegal to fish there. So of course I fish there, and they have these. Well, what are they gonna?
Oh, it was damn good.
Old white guy. What are they gonna do? Hey, you can't fish here. Oh, I didn't know. So they have these.
He's giving away all your secrets.
They have these giant peacocks, and the peacocks sit there at certain times of year.
Yeah.
So you can target them. It's just totally fun.
Yeah,
they're not native to Hawaii either.
Nothing
Nothing is native in Hawaii.
I went to school in Hawaii, and we went to my friend's uncle's house, and he lived on like just a river, and we caught cichlids on like little flies.
Also
we caught
not
cichlids,
native, yeah.
And then we just pinned on the cichlids and like sight fished the peacock bass. It was
awesome. Was that on Oahu?
Yeah, that was.
Did you go to like Punahou or Kamehameha or something?
No,
like
I went to UH Manoa for a year.
I know the school. Yeah,
it was a lot
of
fun.
Good football team.
Yeah, decent. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't do as much fishing as I would have liked, and the bonefish there is something I definitely want to do. And then all the different trevallies they have, the bluefin trevally and obviously the GTs.
Okay, there's a giant bluefin trevally at Mahaulepu on Kauai that haunts me and has haunted me for a decade.
Sounds like a fish that'll break a fly rod pretty easily.
Oh my God, I hooked him and he just manhandled me. But the bluefin trevally is what I target when I go out there. And I tie this fly for the Hawaiian market that, people buy a ton of these things. And that's who you're targeting. They fight like hell. A trevally, they fight like hell, right? Yeah. They're great.
It looks like one of the best game fish almost in the world.
And you can
either
see
bluefin
them.
Or giant.
You can see them because they're so beautiful.
Oh, that's
God
awesome.
made them so you could see them, like a rooster, or a dorado. God made them that way. Otherwise, they'd eat all the little fish, right? Yeah,
that's cool.
Super fun. The trevally, the bluefin.
Yeah. Other overseas trips. I'm just kind of curious because
I was in Sweden last summer.
Really? Oh,
yeah, in the middle of nowhere. I've been lucky. I'm a software guy, so Microsoft has sent me all over the world. And as I was growing my career, I would either bring a snowboard or a fly rod or both, right? So New Zealand, I've been everywhere.
You have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Anyways, I was in a place in Sweden, pretty close to the NATO border, actually, which is relatively scary. Except for in this part of the world, there's no humans. There's more moose than there are. We should tell animal stories too. There are more moose than humans, and in July, in Scandinavia, the sun doesn't go down, so you can fish 24/7, and you do.
And
right?
What do you catch?
They have this fish. It's kind of our largemouth bass. It's called a red perch, but it's not like a perch. European perch, they're often called, and they come up to the top and they fight like hell and they're super fun. But they also have pike and what's the one you eat? Walleye. They have trout, of course, in Sweden. But they have, I was going to transition to ask you guys, what's your best animal story? Because I could tell when you're in the forest, you accumulate animal stories, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Ricky, what's your best animal story?
I'm gonna keep this.
Is it a great white shark?
No, not a shark. I'll keep this ocean related. We were fishing a couple years ago when that bluefin first kind of started popping up in big numbers up by the Channel Islands. I went up there with some buddies of mine, and we were fishing. We were looking for the big fish, but we ran across nothing for the first half of the day. It was blowing like 20 to 25. We were getting our asses kicked.
Yeah, miserable.
And we were like 60 miles offshore. And I look up, I was like, oh, is that a whale over there? It was a pot of orcas.
Oh, sweet.
And seeing orcas, I know recently, the past month, it's been every day people are going out and seeing them.
Yeah, the whale watchers are following them eating dolphins.
Yeah, at that point in time, never obviously have seen an orca in Southern California. That was so cool.
Yeah.
And it was a big pod, and they just swam with the boat. We were getting, again, like, the boat was like, it was full of water. We were so in conditions we probably should not have been out in. And that pod of orcas was definitely, I think, one of the specialist things that I've seen on the water.
I've never seen one in the wild.
And to boot, the second half of that day, we had wide open foam fishing. It was like 60 to 80 pound fish, as much as you want. Anything you threw at them, just immediately you were bit. It was so cool. And I think we put like 8 of those things on the boat, and we're like, we need to go home.
You guys are old enough to remember the longfin, right? The albacore?
Yeah. I never caught one.
It's funny you mentioned the Channel Islands. I mean, that's where we'd fish for albacore when I was your age or younger. And now, they're all up north. And, but the climate change, I seemingly, but we got bluefin out of the deal. Like, we win.
Good trade.
Yeah. We'll take it.
Yeah.
We talked about this on a I'll let you get to your story.
Yeah.
But we talked about this in a previous podcast where it's kind of one of those things where it's just you want what you don't have. The grass is greener, right? Because all the your generation, I think more so than ours, is like, oh man, like we want this albacore to come back, and we're like, really? Like this bluefin?
No, you don't.
This bluefin's a good deal. No, maybe you do.
You want the bluefin.
And then, but
trust me,
exactly what would happen is we would get the albacore back, and as soon as it's full speed albacore,
I miss the bluefin.
Where the bluefin at? When is that going to happen again? So grass is always greener, and another thing we say, we just don't take it for granted. Like the fishery we have in Southern California is actually world class, and people travel here from all over the world.
It's nuts. Do you feel like the world knows how good it is here?
No.
There are points in the summer, we live in Carlsbad, where there's so much bluefin in the neighborhood, you get sick of it.
Yeah.
Like all these guys are going out and
it's hard to give away.
And you can only cook it so many ways,
yeah.
right? And people's freezers aren't big enough for all this.
Even our Dorado fishing,
special.
Like, yes, you can have incredible Dorado fishing in so many parts of the world, and granted we don't get as many big bulls and cows, but it's not, I don't know there's anywhere else in the world, and we're also lucky to have like Everingham and the the bait barges where we can go and get sardine before we even start fishing. You cannot go, to my knowledge, like anywhere else in the world and have a day where it's just like catch as many as you want, like in Baja for sure, but our Dorado fisheries,
with the qualification that you guys know what you're doing. Like an amateur like me couldn't just rent a boat, drive out 30 miles into the ocean.
You probably could, especially 2 years ago. You definitely could have.
That's encouraging. That's good. I hope we don't screw it up.
me too.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's just points back to like it sounds like you guys, I'd love to hear a little bit more about it, but you guys do some conservation within the club, and just again like getting back to
but our fish are in worse shape in some respects than when I say our fish, the trout is in, we really screwed it up over the last 100 years. We just screwed it up, damming the rivers, trout and salmon, damming the rivers and hybridizing them and crossbreeding them and putting them in pens and So it just circles back to just taking care of your fishery. But Nate, what's your wildest animal story?
Yeah, so they gave me great time to think about
it.
And kind of leading perfectly into that, I think every fishery around the world has its moments where it's world class. And San Diego's, completely with that. We have bluefin, but I think the thing that really separates San Diego from everywhere else is our long range scene. And just because, we have a fleet of 90 to 115 foot sport fishing boats, right, where that's all they do, and you go out for 5 to 10 days.
We're talking about my neighbor Ethan.
That's and you do these multi-day trips with professionals, and you could be from New Jersey, you could be from Montana, and you go on one of these trips and you'll catch 30 bluefin or yellowfin or wahoo or whatever. But so I go on these trips once a year. My dad has been doing long range since he was my age.
Cool.
So he takes me on the Vagabond, and one of the coolest experiences I had was before Guadalupe Island was closed, we were able to fish there for 3 days. And it is the wildest thing, being on anchor, having 100-pound yellowfin just boiling around the boat, and you're on one, and then out from the stern comes this enormous shark, like a great white shark that's 20 feet long. And there's 3 of them.
Was it a white?
Oh, yeah. And that's I mean the story. So like you're fishing and this thing just comes out from underneath the boat and it's an inch below the water and it's probably 6 feet wide. I mean they're the most humbling fish I could ever.
Big animal.
It's an insane animal. And what's crazy about them is that they're real slow and sluggish until they choose to not be.
Right.
And oh my god. So I mean like the challenge is that these sharks are around the island almost all the time. And when you're fishing, they'll like group up underneath your boat. So we had 4 of these 20-foot sharks underneath our boat at once.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And you'd be on a tuna and all of a sudden, like, and they wait till the very last moment and they give you this crazy show where you're fighting and you're hoofing and poofing and you're bringing this thing up and all of a sudden it's that color and it's coming around and then this shark comes up underneath the boat and literally at the surface grabs your tuna and shakes it and goes boom and like breaks you off or eats the entire head of your tuna or
like
body of your
like
tuna.
A seal in La Jolla.
But even like to the 10th power.
But
like
20
it's
feet long.
Just nuts. And so I mean we would lose probably 40 or 50% of our fish to the sharks, and it was a problem.
Yeah.
But it was just so cool because at the end of the day, we would keep all of the heads or all the casualties on the boat because if you throw them back, the sharks just stay.
Yeah.
But if you keep them all there, they start to kind of weed out or just kind of like move away. But we dump those heads over at the end of the day, and they go nuts. And it was just this like feeding frenzy of like 3 or 4 great white sharks all eating these heads. And it's just like, you look at it and you're like, that is instant death right there. You jump into there and you're done.
Because they mistake you.
Oh my God. Right? But it just puts everything into perspective.
They
you're
do
this
this in
6-foot
South
human.
Africa.
Yep. I'm sure in South Africa it's the same thing.
They
white
just
sharks
throw a
are
bunch of fish in there that are hooked and the sharks go nuts.
And video does it no justice at all. You have to be there to see these
like
things.
That. Well, that's special. I've never seen a shark that big. Have you seen a shark that big?
No, I don't want to.
No, I wouldn't want to be in the water with them.
No kidding.
Oh my God, the guys going in the cages.
We had a juvenile great white in Adionda over the summer. Did you hear that story?
No.
You know the oyster farm?
Yeah.
Where it's actually cool if you've been there. The tour of the oyster farm.
They let you in there now, yeah.
Yeah. But they have to clean the cages, and the guy was telling me that he's down there. He had scuba, and they're cleaning the oyster cage things, right? And you know that feeling, like your hair sticks up. It's so real. Whether you're in the forest or you're underwater, it's just like, God, what is that? Turns like this battleship just goes right behind him, and he's like up, and like we're getting out of the water, just. Right, that's part of San Diego. We've got this shit.
Crazy.
So of course I'm in my kayak in Adionda like a couple weeks later, and on my cheap ass fish finder, I have this cheap ass little Garmin fish finder. I see this enormous. I'm thinking like, oh, I'm dead.
Do you mark a submarine?
It was a seal.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Well, that's a thing too, and it's kind of interesting to see as more and more people start, like flying drones and stuff. We have so many great whites that are local to our area and
certain times of year, I think.
Yeah,
right?
Dude, they're not bothering anyone. No. But it's just
we're not
like,
delicious.
There's more of them than we probably ever thought.
Well, in the surf, there are so many sharks.
Yeah,
not the type that'll bite you, but lots of sharks.
Oh yeah, even in the bays, we catch 7-gills, leopard sharks, smooth hounds,
cool.
like all the time, the time. I wanted to ask you not your favorite animal encounter, but maybe if you can't narrow it down to one, maybe give us a couple. Just your most special species that you've caught on the fly in the salt specifically.
That tarpon was special.
Oh, I'm sure. And you landed right? You landed that one after 2.5 hours, whatever.
Killed me. And I've caught redfish, in the southeast. God. It's like saying, what's your favorite place to fish?
I know.
Wherever I am.
Yeah.
Right? That's our answer. Where's your favorite place to fish? Well, where I'm standing here. The first timers are always the best. First Dorado, right?
Well,
First rooster fish. Those are always special.
I don't think I ever got your story on your tuna. So locally, you've caught a tuna on the fly?
Yeah, but... it has to be a smaller one. It has to be a certain scenario. I don't really call that special because it was kind of cheating, because they had You call it foaming. I have a new word.
That's
to
not
take home
cheating
with.
at all.
Well, for a fly fisherman, it kind of is.
No.
It wasn't a lot of skill. So it wasn't special. I don't know about you guys, but like over the last 40, 50 years of fishing, the stories I remember the most are the ones I lose.
Oh yeah.
Like
always.
that giant bluefin trevally in Hawaii, and there's some trout I've lost that I've screwed up on, and yeah, I just remember those. But when people like you meet a fly fisherman, they want to hear grizzly bear stories. And if you fish in the wilderness, you run into grizzly bears. My grizzly bear stories aren't that interesting. My son has a really good one. I got this buddy at Microsoft who has a spectacular grizzly bear story. Should I just tell you real quick?
Go ahead.
He's a guide level fisherman, works at Microsoft, like way high up the chain. Like his name is Joe Binder, great guy. And we usually fish the OP, the Olympic Peninsula, for steelhead. But he was fishing one of those big rivers north. They're all Indian names like Skykomish or Saihomish or one of those. And he parked his truck, hiked through the wilderness, and those big rivers, they cut a channel, so the banks are real steep, if you've ever fished big rivers like that. So there's a tree that's fallen, he gets to the river, he looks over, and he's staring at a female grizzly bear in the water's edge, so like 10 feet above it, with 3 cubs.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
it's a bad combo.
Yep.
And this bear is pissed.
Oh boy.
Right? Because he surprised him. That's the thing about grizzly bears. You can't surprise them. So it goes upriver around the log, and they're fast, like a Dorado. If they want to be fast.
Bears and Dorados, yeah.
It starts shooting up the bank, so he goes downriver around the log, just leaves all his gear there, and dives into the river and starts swimming. And he looks back, and the frickin' bear's swimming after him.
No way.
Yeah, way. And he's very fit, and he's just going and going and going. Keeps looking back, the bear's right there, and he's like, "Holy shit! I'm effed."
Yeah.
I'm getting tired. I'm with the current, but so is this bear. Ultimately, he swam. He said it's probably a mile, but he said it was 2 miles. Right? He swam a long way. His truck is now 5 miles away from where he is because it's, the river's going into nowhere. And the bear finally gave up. He gets out of the water completely wet and has to figure out where his truck is. So that's my favorite grizzly bear story.
Oh my God.
I got a million animal stories. If you're in the forest, you run into animals.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So, I've run into some animals. I got bit by a rattlesnake at Lake Hodges. That was probably the closest encounter I've had.
We have them in Calavera.
That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, man. It's not a grizzly bear jumping into the river with you, but like the forethought of that guy to get into the water. As much time as we need.
We're good? Because I have another like 2-minute story that might stretch into 4 that's spectacular.
We got to hear it.
Fly fishermen are not this is kind of a trivia question. The animal that the fly fisherman is most afraid of,
The mountain lion.
a tick. They're the most dangerous. But in terms of mammals, it's the bull moose. Bull moose kill more people than grizzly bears. Grizzly bears are like great white sharks, right? If you scare them, they'll get pissed off and kill you. But that's not their thing. The bull moose, though, they can barely see. They have good, kind of okay smell, but they get fooled. And if they think you're anything that's gonna, hit on their girlfriend, they get pissed. They knock you down and they stomp your head like a watermelon. And unfortunately, it happens a lot, right? So I got to make this story shorter. My folks at Microsoft come and they say, "Hey Tim, we want you to come and do this training for the press, and it's going to be in Estes Park, Colorado, which is on the border of Rocky Mountain National Park." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Wait, what?" And they said, "Yeah, we'll pay for everything. You just need to fly out, and you got to do this all-day training on this developer technology thing, and you got to make this dinner with the Microsoft executives the night before." I'm like, "Fuck yeah." You gonna pay for this? So I take the 6 a.m. out of San Diego, right? I'm in the Big Thompson River in Rocky Mountain National Park by 10:30 in the morning.
Oh, nice.
Right? And I'm absolutely slaying them. But I've never fished there before, and there's no river trail. It just goes straight into the wilderness, straight into the national park. And all of a sudden, it gets dark. And I'm like, holy shit. The only thing I have to do today is make a dinner. And now it's dark. And they're going to be so pissed. Because it's in a canyon. I didn't realize it was, I looked at my watch. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's what happens when the fishing is good.
Yeah, right? You lose total track of being a responsible human. So I head into of course, I forgot the map in my car, in my truck, or my rental car. And I head into the wilderness because I think there's a trail. And I hear the wolves. And if you grow up here, you know what a coyote sounds like, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, you could distinguish the wolf. I'm like, oh, shit, I can't go that way. I can't walk into the wolves. I got to walk the river backwards for like 4 miles. I'm going to be late for this dinner. I won't be able to shower.
Like
I'm
fish.
in waders. Yeah, I stink, So I heads down a slippery river, and you could see where I'm going here, right? At one point, I'm going as fast as I can, but my head's down. It's getting darker. I look up, and like me to you, Nate, I'm staring up because they're 10 feet tall, a bull moose. I'm staring right at him.
And he's looking back at you?
Yeah, he's looking at me. And I'm like, and I don't have bear spray. I don't have a gun. I don't have anything like that. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I start backing up, and you know what he does? He's like, he just turns and starts eating the willows again. He had seen me from like a mile away.
Yeah.
I just didn't see him. So I didn't startle him. Yeah. I run into this dinner. The story's over. I run into this dinner in waders. Like, here I am. I'm in waders. I'm so sorry. I'm a half hour late. Did I miss cocktails?
At least you got a great story to tell everybody.
This Microsoft exec, I won't name him, but he's like, oh, I'm so pissed at you. Whatever.
And then he asked you to take him fishing the next day.
It's fine. Yeah.
I think kind of as we round this out, obviously BD is pretty saltwater exclusive and a lot of conventional fishermen, but someone who might be interested in like going on some of these trips that you talked about, I mean, they sound absolutely insane. And you did say like, yeah, we fly fish, but we also target, everything conventionally as well. And just letting people know like, how to get in touch with you guys.
Yeah, I forgot why I'm here, right?
No.
We're having so much fun.
It's kind of
the club, the San Diego Fly Fishing Club. It's been around forever, since like 1957. It's $40 a year, but most of our events are free. Right? We raise a lot of money for a lot of good. It's nonprofit, so we raise a lot of money for a lot of great things. Mm-hmm. The casting lessons are free. Anybody could show up. Right? You want to go on the Baja trips with us? Come on. We don't care if you pay your $40 a year. I hire famous people in the industry for the monthly meeting, famous in fly fishing, right? And they do presentations and stuff like that. But it's the best deal in town, $40 a year. And these people, like I mentioned, there's some big guns in the club who just love to teach you how to do stuff. Like we're going to go to Mammoth in a few weeks here. Because the fishing in the springtime is really good there. Mm-hmm. In the Rockies, it's terrible because there's so much weather. But here, it's typically pretty good. And there's just like 20 guys and gals ready, willing, and able to guide you, to teach you how to be a fly fisherman. And of course, I mentioned half of our club members are saltwater fly fishermen. So, this is just like another tool in your arsenal. I would maintain all you guys, Ira, both you guys, Nate, Ricky, if I put a fly rod in your hand and you give me 20 minutes and I teach you just a basic overhand cast, you'll never go back. You'll always conventional fish, but every once in a while you'll go, you know what, it'll be fun here? A fly rod, right? So let's do it.
Find another hobby to spend more money on.
I would love to.
Oh, see, that's the good news and the bad news, right? The bad news is then you're gonna buy.
What does the F in fly fishing stand for?
Fucking expensive. You're gonna beep that out, aren't you? I hope. You could, just like in your world, it adds up.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
My first rod was from Cabela's. 40 years ago it was $50.
Yeah, that's the
and
thing.
Now I have $1,200 fly rods. I have a guide deal, so I don't have to pay that much. But people pay that much for rods like that, so it gets expensive. Yeah, not as expensive as you guys with your $200 lures.
You're completely right.
Are you kidding me?
You're completely right.
I did the trolling thing in Mexico with my buddy, and he's like, "Don't screw this up because it's $250." I'm like, "What? Then don't give it to me.
Yeah, don't let me tie it on if you don't want to lose it.
You do the knot.
Yeah. But I think the coolest thing about the San Diego Fly Fishers Club is that these people weren't originally interested in fishing, but they chose this little niche and they're fired up about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just as cool. You know, they're out in the same environments, they're having the same experiences, and if they do it, you know, via a different medium of fishing, I mean,
just
who
another
cares,
tool.
You know, it's just another tool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
In you know, we're a vacation destination, obviously. So people come into town from, you know, fly fishers are concentrated in different places in the world, just not here. Trout fishermen, that is. So they come in town and said, "Hey, can you fly?" And we take care of them. We totally take care of them.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a cool club. Good people.
Yeah, sounds like a good deal. Well, yeah, thanks for coming out and sharing some
it's fun.
stories. That was a good
fun.
time.
Great fun.
And now are we going to the bar?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
That's
Because
it.
I'm the
Part
trap.
2.
I'm stuck down here.
No, I'd love to have you back maybe like mid-season and talk about what you had going on and talk about your Baja trip. Hopefully you hang like a 100-pound triple-digit bluefin on the fly rod by then.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
No, we'll do it. It'll be another heartbreaker story. But yeah, no, appreciate you coming out. That was a
fun.
good time.
Fun, guys. Yeah,
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cool, man. Thank you, Tim.